Hi everybody, and we are live. Thank you for joining me. I will try to keep this one a little bit shorter tonight because I've started late, kind of as usual. But I'll try to fly through it and not spend too long dwelling on things. Hope you're all well. Tonight, as the title suggests, I'm talking about the university murder machine. So there was a recent controversy. I've also to stop scratching my nose as much. It doesn't look good, does it? So the USI kind of controversy where they were having like their annual Congress conference, whatever it is, to decide on their plan going forward, their constitution, whatever it is, right? And there's basically a controversial kind of amendment, or I'm not doing this very well. I think I'll just show you. What I'm talking about because it kind of speaks for itself. So let's just look at this. So this was, it's in the wrong place. There we go. This was, that's not very clear, is it? It was, this was rejected by the USI. The USI is the Union of Students in Ireland. So it's the Irish version. In Britain, it's the, not the NHS, the NUS, I think, National Union of Students. So they have a lot of power in what they do. Interestingly, they're funded to, as far as I know, it's a couple of million. It's like 3 million every year, involuntarily taken from all students, as far as I know. So it's one of these things. If you've been to university, you understand the clique of student union politics and these USIs and stuff. They don't really speak for anybody. I don't know how they really exist. I don't know. They manage to just exist, and they have complete domination over this whole kind of thing. And I think a lot of you as well who, again, I always speak to this viewer, the viewer who is new to the channel and doesn't agree with me on everything, but you'll agree that even if they weren't your enemies at the time, they are certainly alienating. You know, you go, I don't, you know, these aren't my type of people at all. Like, you know, I think most people, even if they're not radical right and political and all of this, most people are just like, ugh, you know, they just stay away from it, and that's all it is. So that's the USI. Give this a share around as well, lads. Don't be afraid to give it a share. I won't say anything too rude or controversial, so you could get away with sending it to one of your normal friends, as they say. I'll try not to get you in trouble. So this one, and we will go to, by the way, just to outline what I'm going to do here, I'm going to look through their slides. They did slides for this whole conference thing, and I have like 20 different motions to look at, and some of them are quite funny and quite interesting and quite scandalous or I don't know, kind of appalling type of student stuff. You know, I just want to go through that and riff off of it. I don't need this anyway. Although I'm so used to it now, I'll leave it off. So no, God, it's a habit now. I feel wrong without it. So yeah, there were lots of them. I just want to talk through them and then just riff off of it to just talk about university in general, because it's one of those things I haven't maybe referred to enough, and it is important. It's not petty, it is important. Well, I've referred to it through the Burkean, and they will come up again tonight as well. So this anyway, as kind of unclear as it is to read actually, because it's slightly blurry, isn't it? But that's the way it came. So the motion, which was put in by, I should really know better here. Look, leave me off. I'm talking broadly about this. It was introduced by Minute Students Union, some guy called Nessa or something like that. Anyway, whoever brought it about, let's just take it at face value in a way, especially because I don't know who it is. So let's just take it at face value. First off, it failed. It didn't pass. And so the Congress notes, I'm reading this for the first time, by the way. The student movement must unite students of all political persuasions if it is to meet its full potential to defend the fundamental educational, welfare, economic, political, social, and cultural interests of its members, working together for the benefit of all students. Due to recent student media coverage, it has made some students from certain political leanings feel less welcome in the movement. And then it's Congress believes that diversity is the greatest strength of the union and that no student should feel deterred from constructively participating in the activities of the movement. Congress believes that USI must reach out to people of all political beliefs and none to harness their perspectives and capabilities for the advancement of students' needs and the realization of their rights. Congress mandates to the president. This is all formality stuff. To seek to actively reach out to students of all political leanings, the youth and student wings of all political parties, to encourage greater participation in the activities of the movement. Congress further mandates the president to organize activist liaison and training, cutting across all political divides in order to encourage greater participation of all groups within the movement, whilst recognizing that some groups are not as aligned with the students' unions as others and may need additional encouragement. I think that's just a fantastic thing. That bit at the end there, I'm new to. It's a good point. Recognizing that some groups are not as aligned to the students' unions as others and may need additional encouragement. Now, that it's a cringe thing to say, but that would be true diversity, to say, like what I talked about a while ago, a lot of people are alienated from it. They don't feel like they're part of that clique. If you're not one of those type of people, it's really hard to put my finger on it. It's kind of an elite. Like if your name is Sorka, or if your name is, I don't know, they might have some of the names Oscuelga as well, Fwinog or whatever, you know, and or Penny. You'll get a lot of pennies and poppies and stuff like that. No offense to either of anyone with that name, but it's that type of thing. And if you're, you know, if you come from a normal background, if you come from a working class background or just a normal background, a normal suburban kind of background or whatever country background, again, you know what I mean by normal. For me, it was like, I don't know, it was like kind of like a bomb hit me a little bit when I got to university, because the scale of these people, you know, and I didn't actually think about it at the time. I just enjoyed myself and did my work or whatever. But in retrospect, it was so alienating and so strange, and I didn't want to be anywhere near these people, and I didn't want to have anything to do with them. And I thought, you know, most people at university I thought were normal. The average Joe Soap, you know, going to and from his lectures and having a few parties is so alienated by this stuff, the meetings and this and that, you know, and you dip your toe in it a little bit and it's like, oh lads, no. And this is trying to say, hey, we'll get some other groups that wouldn't typically be part of the gang, let's say, and we'll actually actively encourage them, almost like a, you know, what's that word? I've forgotten the word. Like when they let people into colleges and give them extra credit. I need more tea. Affirmative action. Affirmative action in this case would make sense. Let's just, okay, so X, Y, and Z people, they're always going to be here. They always have been, always will be. Everybody knows everybody in this group. Let's try and get some of these other political people, these other cultural people, whatever, into this whole scene. If it's going, someone said cult. Cult maybe was a word I'm looking for, yeah. But it's kind of an elite cult, and it's a backslapping in a kind of a not gone bean way. It's much more sophisticated than that, you know. Do you know what's another name someone could have in this clique? Their name, it just occurred to me like an epiphany. You wouldn't have to look far to find yourself a Toby. In these cliques, I'd say you could just swing a cat and you'd hit a Toby. But what was my point? Yeah, so they're trying to, you know, it's objectively a reasonable point of view. It's to say, hey, let's do that, and it got all of this backlash from this kind of university scene. I'll just go through some of it now. Let's look at some of the reactions. This person here, again, I don't care about this person. Don't, you know, I have no issue with this person. I don't know or care about them, right? But very glad to see this motion be struck down. No matter what we do, there will always be political views that we cannot engage with. Racism, homophobia, transphobia, and any other form of hatred are not and will never be political views we can engage with. Which is funny, because obviously the way it goes is that I would say to him, whoever he is, he, she, they, I would say, okay, well, I don't consider myself in the way that you mean it, racism, homophobia, transphobia, that I hate people irrationally, or that I have a bigotry, not bigoted, not ignorant, not hateful, hold no grudge against any individual for any particular reason, or judge them according to their group. This kind of blind judgment. What else? Just general malice and evil and just being bad. I think that's what they mean by it, evil. So if that's what you mean by those words, I obviously don't identify with those, right? So I don't identify with those words. But he would, if he took a look at any of my videos or whatever, he'd go, "No, you are though. You are, because you say that, you know, you generally disagree with some of the direct provision centers, and you disagree a bit with immigration, and you think drag queen story hour for 6-year-olds is not appropriate, where they like have dildos and all this stuff. That makes you a fascist." And then you go, "Well, like the majority of the country would agree with me on that. So how can I be extreme, radical, or fringe?" And he would just go, "Never mind, I can't talk to you anymore because you're a fascist, because you're whatever." So it's a circular thing, right? Obviously. So he's going, "That's not a political view." It's it's disingenuous. I've said it before many times. They don't argue for this reason, and there's a reason why they're so freaked out by it, right? If they were talking about like a Scientology, if we were Scientologists, they would say, "Come on in and let's have a good old debate." They would be loving it. But to anyone who's not left, right, or whatever, who's just watching this, there's no other way to explain this kind of cloistered mentality towards people who are kind of nationalist and kind of like normal kind of people. There's no way to explain this kind of attitude other than fear of not being able to compete in the battle or the realm of competing ideas. There's just absolutely no ability to do it, and a obvious awareness of their inability to do that, clearly, because there's no other way, because that's basically it. They would say, "No, it's not that we don't think we can beat your ideas. It's because of blah, blah, blah. It's because we don't want to platform you. We don't want to legitimize you," something like that, right? But no, I could debate a Scientologist on the volcano thing or whatever their thing is. I wouldn't fear legitimizing them, because I would think, I don't have to fear legitimizing you. I would relish that debate. That's quite an easy one for me to win on by popular mandate. Put 500 people in front of us. Let's debate that. I have no fear of platforming you or legitimizing you, because I think I'll actually delegitimize you because of your ideas. That argument doesn't make sense. It comes back to a complete awareness of their own inability to compete in the realm of competing ideas. I think I've said compete twice there. That was kind of a long sentence. But that's the attitude. That's the take from some of these people. I'll get into some of these other takes. Here's a guy who had something to do with the motion. I think, if I'm wrong, I apologize. He seemed to be coming up a lot on this. "Very disconcerting that the motion to, quote, reach out to people of all political beliefs and none has not passed. The leap people are making between this and promoting fascism is beyond objectionable." Look, this is probably some like classical liberal student. More power to him, right? But it's just welcome to the game, homie. It's like, and it is shocking, but you just have to get used to it in a way, and kind of learn to deal with it. Step up your game, accept it, move on, transcend. But that's not logical. It's like, yeah, I know it isn't, right? They made a link, a emotion which, as far as I can see, sincerely did not have fascist motivations. They're not some swastika wavers kind of thinking, "Oh, we'll trick them with this and that," right? And the people who genuinely just want an open debate. Let's have an open thing that promotes all ideas in an open. It's basically completely objective. It's fair. It's as fair as a starting line in a foot race. It's objectively, scientifically, mathematically a fair way of doing things. And yet they automatically translate an open political environment to fascism, not only allowing it or maybe leaving the door open to it. And by the way, fascism just means being normal, having normal opinions to these people. So when I refer to that word, that's what I mean, right? For anybody who wants to start quoting me. They didn't just say that this motion, or they didn't suggest that this motion leaves the door open to it, therefore it's this and that. No, they directly say it's promoting fascism. They might as well say it's a fascist motion of itself, right? To say that, to say, to have an open thing is, you just have to step back and look at this and just say, okay, we're dealing with shameless enemies here. And that's one of the things. I might sound harsh sometimes or whatever, But it's like, I've had my years of being aghast at this stuff, scratching my head going, that doesn't make sense. That's not logical, or that's a non sequitur or something like that, right? No, these people are not trying to make sense. They're afraid. It's afraid, right? So no, that's why they can't allow a thing like this in. So a guy like this in disbelief, again, more power to him, but like, that's the game. I just want to find some other kind of people tweeting on this. I'll come back to these, but I do want to just, here's an interesting thing. The USI accounts for 2019, and I'm sure you could find this, but this is the, you kind of can't see it, but I can see hundreds of thousands and stuff like that. There's a lot of money going around. Like I say, I'm open to correction, but you're talking 3 odd million being taken from students, from their fees, without their kind of consent. It's just taken. So again, the idea that you could say, well, let them be this cloistered kind of political cult. People are entitled to that, but it's like, no, because they're representing all, Jane and John Doe in universities in Ireland. Everyone. I went to university, so they were representing me. So no, that's not fair. No, they're a public, kind of mandatory thing. They should have a charter that they should have to, basic things like this. This is completely basic, and it failed. And wait till you see some of the stuff that passed. So I'm just going to get to that now, actually. Get rid of that and that. So, here it is. Okay, I'm going to have to go back to the start because I just have them taken down here. I took down about 20 of them. I hope you can see all of that okay. So the first one I've noted here is number 18. Let's just see what it is. This is kind of like a surprise thing for me now because I haven't kept track of which is which. Reporting racism. That passed, carried. They want to institute the iReport tool for racism, as if racism is the rampant on campus, right? The structures are not in place in our campus to tackle racism. Come on. Despite anecdotal reports that racism does happen in third level institutions, where in the name of God does that happen in reality? Blah, blah, blah. So that passed. Next one is actually number 19, supporting LGBTQ plus students. Now, I'm not going to go on an anti-gay screed here or anything, right? It's just, do LGBTQ not have enough support everywhere? Absolutely everywhere, right? But, yet this carried. Next one, the cost and criteria of Irish citizenship. So the total fee to become a citizen is 1,100 euros, and they want to reduce it. You can see that for yourself there. But again, this is where their heads are at, right? And there's no balancing act against these people, because to have that would be, in their eyes, fascism. To say, it's like, it's not much of a vote if the idea of you saying, no, I think we should have it as is. Actually, I think we should raise it. I think we should increase it. Fundamentally, I think it should be harder to become an Irish citizen. They would say, well, and like I'm speculating here, but I know this for sure to be true. They would completely skip all other avenues and go, that is fascism, that is Nazism. So it's like, well, what's the point in all this voting, right, on these radical issues? Do you think if they polled all the students, I don't know, they would have that much of a unanimous kind of opinion? The next one is number 30. Skipping on ahead here. We are at number 30, PrEP accessibility. Okay, so PrEP is already pretty accessible, right? And it's like, again, you have a choice to, like, you could pay for this yourself. You could just not. I've done a whole video on HIV in Ireland. You can look it up. I was shocked when I did this video myself. I've basically found out that, like, if you're not having sex with African people fresh off the boat, or gay, and specifically gay with the Brazilian partner, basically very limited parameters that a lot of people maybe don't fall into. What they could, it's like, the truth is that you have to be in these parameters, and technically anybody can get HIV, but in reality, the odds are so different between these people. Anyway, so they're saying, funnily, they noticed that all these prep slides and anything you will read about prep notes this, which is quite funny. That studies in countries where PrEP is available has shown to increase the likes of syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia. Great. It's because basically gay people who have a lot of high sexual partner count and high levels of promiscuity, on average, will take PrEP and then feel like they're free to do whatever they want, and they end up getting other STDs or whatever. So, you know, and again, it's like, again, if you were to bring up any of these points, fascist. So what's the next one I had noted there? 32. Shag packs. Now, I'm not going to be Father Ted here, right? Shag packs, it's like condoms, stuff like that in a packet in university they hand out to people. I can't fundamentally, some of the like hardcore trad cats here will be given out to me, but I'm not, that's not my hill to die on, right? I'm kind of okay enough with that in itself. It just got me thinking about, you know, these barely post-pubescent girls of like 19, you know, some of them kind of late bloomer type of thing, who go to university. Sometimes you see them and you know, freshers, and you go, they're nothing more than girls basically, you know, and they're starting out in college and they're kind of nervous and stuff. And you think there's a lot of them are going to get like pumped and dumped by like 5 guys in the first 6 months of their like college year. You know, a Chad, a creeper, another Chad, you know, a ghoster, followed by another creeper, followed by another Chad, right? And it's like, you know, you're handing out condoms to them, which is technically okay, but it's like what you're doing is it's kind of handing out all the stuff and being like, go for it, go enjoy yourself type of thing, right? And it's like, you know, they don't point out that like this could cause you psychological trauma. So I know you can protect yourself with a condom and a pill and this and that, but you can't protect your well-being. You can't protect yourself from having a nervous breakdown. And if you don't, you know, if you think I'm jumping the shark there a little bit, why is it that completely ordinary girls who go to college, they're perfectly nice people under the tutelage of their mother and their school and their community and family, they go away to college and within like 6 months they have a shaved head, a ring in their nose, they are constantly talking about how depressed they are, etc. I mean, do I relish that? Absolutely not. I think it's terrible. But it's like, can we start asking about why that happens? You know, when Britney Spears shaved her head, right? Everybody intuitively understood, bit of a pop culture moment here, but everybody intuitively understood that what was kind of going on there is this woman is having a nervous breakdown. Doesn't mean that all shaved-headed women are having breakdowns, but you know, it's a lot of the time it is, right? Someone who suddenly shaves their head, dyes it green, gets the ring, looks unhealthy, seems to be constantly talking about how depressed they are and actually depressed. Maybe that correlates with getting pumped and dumped by a load of guys, maybe starting for the first time within a few months and not seeing it coming and being taken in and being brought into this college culture, which already via American media and stuff seems to suggest this kind of promiscuous sexual activity to students, men and women. And then you start handing out all this stuff to them and being like, have a great time, guys, go for it. It's like, you know, maybe we could actually not. And that's why I say murder machine in quoting Padraig Pearse in the title of this video, because that's what you're pushed into, this meat grinder. And they're handing you condoms and they're handing you PrEP and everything else, which again, you don't have to argue against those things in and of themselves, but it's like, well, what's the broader picture here? What is being promoted? What is being suggested? What is being, through all of these mechanisms, condoms, PrEP, whatever else, right? These are coping strategies to deal with the activity that's being done. They are kind of like flood prevention type thing. You know, it's like, okay, we can talk about the flood prevention. Those things are fine. Maybe put them up, but maybe we should talk about the flood as well. Like, what's causing the flood? Was there a dam put up? Is it rivers being redirected? Is something unnatural going on here? Something a bit culturally ingrained that is a problem in and of itself? I don't know. Could you ask those questions? And if you did, I think you might be a fascist, according to these people. So that's that. So as you can tell, I'm generally just rambling through these slides. slide 36. International student financial support. This one I'm not going to spend too much time on, but again, it's the theme of these guys, you know. So not only are they banning open discourse under the auspices of fascism, but you see what the result of that is. When you completely cut off an entire side of the political spectrum unnaturally by mandate to say it's not allowed, you end up with this insane set of policies and agendas. Of course you do, right? Because there's no one there. Because for you to be there to say, well, I disagree with that, I don't think we should do that, let me make my argument, then you're a fascist. So, you know, again, it's a circular thing. And it's international student financial support. Again, it's like, you know, this is a zero-sum game in a way. You know, for every international student, for every international person coming into a university, it can't just expand indefinitely or infinitely. And there are limits on all of these things. So one kind of can be at the expense of another, you know, even if you're talking about accommodation, various things like that. It's and also, you know, financial support for international students. Again, money isn't actually infinite. So it's like supporting them. Every decision you make positively is a foregone opportunity of somewhere else, you know, so it's a fair thing. And someone else could make that point, but then they would, of course, be a fascist. Next one is 38. Cervical cancer awareness and age threshold. Now this one, you know, buckle your seatbelts for this one, because I find this one just particularly interesting. So the Cervical Check Ireland provides free smear tests to women over 25 years of age. Cervical cancer is increasing amongst the younger population of women in Ireland. The younger population. I wonder, seems like they've kept that intentionally vague, actually. Why didn't they just say the under 25 population? And maybe it is, but anyway. Although free smear tests are provided to women over the age of 25, women under that age may develop cervical cancer and must pay to have one done, as well as wait to get appropriate treatment. So if you're under 25, a woman under 25, you have to, if you want a smear test, you have to pay for it, right? So I don't know, €60, maybe plus another 60, call it €100, something like that, right? To get this test. And it's just an interesting thing. Now, if you didn't know anymore, you'd go, okay, you know, who'd argue with that? Fair enough, or whatever. But I had a infamous kind of run-in with some people on this a while back, and it was this. It's this tweet is the most impressions I've ever gotten on a tweet, and it was a lot of angry, mad thoughts basically coming at me about it. I've had tweets that this one seems to have like 2,000 likes, and it's basically, I don't know, could you quite call that a ratio, but it's got a lot of replies. You could see a bunch of angry kind of woke thoughts. And funnily enough, I've had tweets that have gotten like 5,000 and 6,000 retweets and 7,000 likes, and they didn't get as many impressions as this. This one went wild all over the certain segment of Twitter I wasn't aware of. It was very funny in its own way. So what I said was, I quoted these two young ones talking about this very thing of smear tests, and what triggered these. This is a kind of a segue here, but what triggered all of these people in the comments, right, is that not only did I make a political point they didn't like, or a point about testing that they didn't like, but I quoted each person's tweet and took their avatar, their profile picture, and put it next to the pictures, next to their tweets without comment, as you can see. Just put it there. I didn't say anything about them. I just put it there. And it kind of seemed to be like, you do not turn the mirror back on these people. You do not maybe comment on their appearance, or, you know, or anything like that. It touched a nerve in the thought community. It absolutely did. And there is substance to this, but I just have to explain the history of this to you. So as one girl said, I paid €160 that I didn't have to for a smear test today. Why the fuck? Basically what I was getting at was kind of niche political privilege for certain groups over others, and this kind of thing of like thoughts and feminist issues, the kind of woke thought kind of crossover there. seems to just constantly be demanding special treatment above other, and I will back that argument up. For whatever reason, as it's a result of political kind of ascendancy to say we deserve special things. And I'm not against women getting funding for this and that and the other. What I'm against is special treatment for special groups type of thing, right? And so I'll make this point as I go. But she's saying I paid 100, blah blah blah. It's a test that all girls should be getting once sexually active, says Dr. Lauren here, right? This country is a effing joke. And then the other one was, and they, I just added in her picture just to say this is the person giving this opinion. That's all. And then this random guy says, funnily, get some perspective. You've probably paid more for a pair of shoes or dinner, right? Like 100 and something euro. And she says paying for a luxury should not be compared to paying for healthcare to try to detect early stages of cancer. And he says hilariously, why shouldn't it? Right? As in, if I'm going, oh, I don't know, I feel funny about I have a random funny feeling about my pancreas, right? And I've heard that even though it's low numbers, that it's theoretically possible, and there are some outside chance cases that people in their 20s actually can end up getting pancreas cancer, I don't know, something like that. It's like, my point is that like that's a kind of a thing where like it shouldn't just be paid for me. I should, if I have an issue like that, it's just like any other thing where you go to the doctor and you have to pay for it. And then the exceptional thing is where the government recognize actuarially more likely health risks among certain demographics with certain diseases, and they'll start to kind of mass fund all of these ones as a kind of a measure. So they look at that objectively and they decide. And that's the point I was kind of getting at, to say, there's no reason to kind of put under 25s for a smear test for a cervical cancer above, I'm 29 and I could have a heart condition, but it's like, I could keel over of a heart attack in 6 months' time, right? I don't know. I could probably find situations where it does happen. It's just so unlikely that the state doesn't apportion its limited resources to testing all 29-year-olds for that, because it's like that would be at the expense of other things. So we have to ration it in a certain way, right, where it makes sense. And my argument is just to say, listen, I could be for under 25s getting the free test. But in that case, I want any other group who has a similarly low risk for a certain thing, which a test, whatever. I want everybody to get that, not just because for some reason it's fashionable, you're a politically loud group, under 25s, women, feminism, thoughts, all that. Not just because you raise your voice like that, because then what about the 72-year-old man who doesn't have as much of a voice, or, this kind of demographic? I was saying it should be done statistically on need and risk. We either do it that way or we do it all universally. We either do it according to risk, objectively, let medical professionals agree on that themselves, uninfluenced by political agendas of certain demographics, let that happen and just let it pan out the way it does. Or we have universal testing and free healthcare for everybody. And you can just go in electively and say, I want this test, I want that test, right? I will join you side by side and agree that we should go. I actually would, universal healthcare, NHS type of thing. I'll agree on that. So I'll agree if that's your claim. If that's your demand, then I agree. I'll support you, I'll promote you. But if it's a specific special rights for special classes, and you're admitting that, oh, well, I should be able to buy shoes and all that, I should be able to buy shoes and luxuries and not pay for my smear test, which is medically not necessarily recommended anyway for under 25s. I should be able to get that for free as a kind of an elective thing or whatever. And I should be able to buy shoes and buy everything else. But the implicit thing said there, if she's not saying universal healthcare, is to say that, but the 72-year-old who has some weird liver issue or whatever, or that might be a bad example, the 50-year-old man who has a thing, which is maybe a statistically even more of a risk, he should have to pay. Because by not saying universal, you're saying that I'm fighting for a specific thing. And I just think that's deeply wrong, right? That's all I was saying. And he funnily says there, well, why shouldn't it? And she says, absolute man's world you're living in, right? Complete airheadedness, right? A mix of kind of progressive, like kind of certain type of politics from a certain types group of people came up with this type of politics and mixed with kind of bimbos and airheads. And that was just, I was just pointing that out. Then I backed it up to say, first we spend money on children with scoliosis, then maybe we can subsidize thought, alcohol consumption, makeup, clothes, and casual sex. So I was being a bit of a flamethrower there, right? A bit of a fire starter, but I maintain that it's true. I was saying, if we have to apportion scarce resources, unless we're doing it for everybody, and you haven't made that argument, so I'll assume you're not making that argument. If you're saying we should be apportioning it to people, I think we should apportion it to need first, need and risk first. Now, so maybe kids with scoliosis. I'm sure if you did an objective analysis, many other demographics would come out top trumps in a actual analysis of risk and threat. So I was like, first we do that, and then we do some other things, and maybe eventually we get to you. I don't know. We let the statistics, say what they say, right? And I just quoted the HSE themselves. It's on their website. Anyone under the age of 25 isn't invited for screening. This is because there is no evidence that screening would be of any benefit to them. At this stage in life, normal cells change in the cervix. Cell changes in the cervix can look like very abnormal cells. These normal changes are part of your body's development. If we tested you at under 25, changes that are normal might be treated as abnormal. So basically what they're saying is because the cell changes at that age, it'd be a shit show. We're testing and it could look a certain way, and that could be positive, that could be negative, we don't know. So that makes it hard to treat or not treat or to decide. It's a mess. And then versus the numbers who get it, on balance, it's probably better they've decided. I mean, they didn't decide for political reasons, I'm sure. They're saying that that's the way it is. You could be sent for treatment when you don't need it. This could cause you unnecessary worry. Invasive cervical cancer is also very rare at this age. So again, it's like me being 29 with a heart thing. It's like they would basically say that, in theory, yes, you could be a ticking time bomb. But to just go around giving all 20, and not only giving, but encouraging all 25-year-olds to get their free heart check. And then if there was an anomaly with the heart, that you could have a perfectly healthy heart and it's hard to distinguish from a problematic heart. So then you go down the road of surgery, treatment. It's just a mess. It's just better not to. And that's kind of the argument. I think that last Trugale is saying false positive, essentially. Yeah. And that's the issue. So I just pointed that out. And there was something else someone brought up with that too. Is where am I with this? I'll leave this alone then. Yeah, there was more to that. There was also a point of like increased sorry, I'm just getting distracted, but it's basically evidenced that increased sexual activity and more partners in young women does have an effect of slightly raising the likelihood of contracting or getting HPV, cervical cancer, whatever. I'm no expert on it, right? And I'm not claiming to be. I'm referring to the HSE and some of these other facts. But again, that's the point on that. That argument is a completely politicized thing in terms of actual evidence and all of that. There is no need for that. Not only is there no need for that, but it's probably counterproductive, a waste of money. And most of all, the insulting part of it is that that money could be apportioned to someone else. Again, I'm a 29-year-old male, right? Now, I could say, I've had to go to the doctor in the last couple of years for this or that or whatever. I don't know. It's not occurring to me now, but for whatever. And I've had to pay my €60 in. And then if I had to get a blood test, it's another 60 or whatever. I feel like it'd be obnoxious of me to go in and say, my campaign is for the very blood test that I needed to get there, that I needed to pay for. I think that should be free. I think that should be seen. The way I'd get in trouble for so-called saying something racist or whatever. I think having that attitude, the one I've just described, should be treated as taboo, should be treated as you're disgraceful, right? So I thought it was very funny that they were kind of coming back on me, and I was like going, you're so confused because I'm actually the one in the justified position here. What you're saying is deeply wrong, right? So I'm 29. I say, I want to get the blood test that I just happen to need and get. I think that one should be free. How wrong is that? The noble thing would be to say, well, I'd love if it would be free, but I'm sure there are plenty people in line probably that have less money than me, who have greater need than me. They are suffering more. Their risk is greater. The consequences of not being treated is greater. All of this stuff. I just want you guys to statistically analyze all that. And if I happen to be number one on that, brilliant. But if I'm not, apportion those resources to the most needy, right? it's almost like the communist line, like to each according to his ability and his need. And it's like your need is less than others, right? So I just thought that it was bad in that sense. So that was that. But returning to this, lo and behold, I don't know, a few months later, it's now in the USI charter. It's been carried. They should do it. Where's the discussion? Were I to be in this debate and say, hey, I have a not only a technical argument against this, but a kind of a moral one as well, and a legitimate one. It's not that anybody wants cervical cancer or is against women, or none of that. Obviously not, right? We all have female friends and wives, girlfriends, mothers and sisters and daughters, but it's just that just doesn't make sense, and it's actually morally wrong to do that. I've outlined that point, but and yet here it is, with unopposed, and it's a political agenda, an actual very egregious political agenda. But again, the point I ultimately return to here is that there's nobody to argue against that, because they've kind of banned it, via the rejection of an open discussion bill that was proposed, right? So it's completely rigged. And again, these people get millions, by force from all the students in the country, and yet they're intentionally not representing them. And the next one is, where was it? That was I've kind of lost myself on this one. So that was 3843. I've just picked out random ones here. There's others and stuff, and some there. Of course, there are some that are fair enough. By the way, can I just say this one? Wolfhound says, "Hit the like, please." Sure, why not? It's only there to your left, right? But and I'm going to do it myself. This one made me laugh so much. I just looked at this like an hour ago, and I think it's so funny. I was like, I wish I was reacting to this for the first time in front of you, because I was like, decade, international decade for people of African descent. Whatever happened to a good old day, or a week, or even a month? A decade? Like, the decade for people of African descent lasting from 2015 to 24 sets out programs of actions, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, the Congress notes with concern. The Irish government has yet to launch the decade. The decade hasn't started yet. So if we're starting 5 years late, does that mean we keep it up for another 5 years? What is this about? Like why? The decade is opt-in and is not enforced, but provides real opportunities to tackle racism in Irish society. And what racism, right? What racism? And have conversations about what can be done to overcome prejudice. So yeah, it's like they haven't yet to launch the decade, the Irish government, bigots. What's the next one? That was 43. 55. So we skip forward into the 50s here. 55. And it is intersectionality. USI shall take an intersectional approach to its work. I need not say more. Intersectionality is insane. It's like, again, it's akin to Scientology. Just look up intersectionality. It's convoluted. It doesn't make sense. It's contradictory. I don't know. Look up a video on intersectionality from like whoever, and they'll tell you about it. I need not go into it here. It's just insanity. All that insanity stuff you've seen around the place. That's what it is. It's intersectionality. But again, you'll notice all of these things that I'm pointing out, all of these motions, these were all carried. These were all carried, probably more or less unanimously or very easily. How well that they were carried, but funnily enough, this then gets rejected. This, which is the most universally agreeable thing ever, right? It falls. But yet this stuff on like, and there's more to come, but like this stuff which is deeply disagreeable and is not a universally agreeable thing, among most people, flies through. Those two things are obviously connected. So next one is integration of displaced persons into education. So asylum seekers into education, institutions of third level education to follow the lead of Dublin City University and pursue a university of sanctuary designation. So it's asylum seekers. Again, people from Georgia, Albania, Nigeria, all these places which have no logical reason to be asylum seekers. It's basically open borders, a backdoor for any economic migrant or any migrant of any reason who just wants to come here. And the universities will be like, welcome, you can learn here for free, University of Sanctuary, every program will be available to you. And keep in mind, I'm not just being a Grinch or a kind of a Scrooge about this. It's just that there are limitations to resources, right? I'm no Gambine or Fine Gael here on any of this stuff, but it's like, logically speaking, there are limited resources in every sense: land, housing, money, space, places, whatever. So every one of these is at the expense ultimately of an Irish person, to some extent. You can't expand fast enough to have an infinite inclusion of every single person. It comes to the detriment of somebody else, an Irish person, ultimately. And it's like, so we have these like idiots and these lunatics and like fanatical ideologues fighting for some, like, imagine this like 32-year-old Georgian man who's like smoking a cigarette, who's like being introduced to these people, and they're like, oh, we have, and he must just be thinking these people are insane, but I'll take it. Like, it's imagine the contempt that fosters in asylum seekers. I actually think it's bad, because I think it probably makes them hate us in a strange way and have contempt for us. At least if they're going to be here, they should respect us, and see us as people who are wise and smart, and we're not going to be bullshitted either, and we're not fanatical like these lunatics, like who just can't see something right in front of their face. So this is what we're dealing with. But again, it's like I say, it's all rigged. And if you think, what's the point of talking about universities? These are the people who are going to be government and NGOs and everything else, and in the corporate world, running the diversity club, terrorizing the whole corporate workplace itself in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So it doesn't matter. And when I say they're going to be doing it in 5-10 years, I mean, they're already in there doing it anyway, the last crop. So it's not irrelevant at all. It's extremely relevant. Next one is 70, expansion of the 2N2U campaign. Oh yeah, again, I'm not going to go all MRA here on this, right? That's not really my hill to die on, but the organization Women's Aid runs a successful 2N2U dating abuse campaign, which is supported by the USI. The campaign, whilst being very beneficial, has limitations in regards to the type of relationships and genders it focuses on, right? As if college students en masse, if you were to poll them, give a shite about this stuff, right? As in about like which of the 350 million genders or whatever. This is not normal world stuff at all. Like, this is a cloistered clique, a cult, an elite kind of ivory tower group of people, right? The severe okay, so they're working again, domestic violence, sexual harassment. I'm not coming out against those being worked on at all, right? But there's an aspect of it here I'm trying to find. The campaign helps young women to spot the danger signs of dating abuse. So that's what I want to focus on, something like dating abuse. Like, I think they would be talking about the stuff of like the pump and dump, which I'm highly against, right? Now, I don't think it should be illegal or anything. Not currently, anyway. Maybe under a trad society, it could be, in a way. You get a whip for it or something. But I'm sure they're talking about, dating abuse provides information to combat online stalking and digital abuse, as well as signposting support services. So digital abuse, online stalking, someone following you, being like, text me back, text me back, text me back, you fucking bitch. Show me this, show me that. I mean, I agree. That's like highly unbecoming and is disgusting, and it's not cool at all, right? And it can border into full-on harassment. I'm not arguing against that. It's the darker side, the toxic side. People will give out to me for saying that, but the darker side and the more, unpleasant and bad side of male-female interactions coming from a male direction, right? But again, the thing that dawned on me looking at this is that if you were to set up a 2N2U male group about women, I'm not going to get into it. I don't have any chip on my shoulder, but of course, just like men have their darker sides and their abusive sides towards women in certain ways in their dating interactions and stuff like that. It takes two to tango. There are things that women do that are negative, that are toxic, that are hurtful, that are abusive. All of these things, right? Of course. I think most people would agree that, yeah, to some extent that exists. You could say men do it more, women do it more, whatever, but either way, to some extent, both have their features, right? And I was thinking, well, okay, so if you have this campaign and you agree the 2N2U for women campaign Cool. But then you say, I want to set up one as well, in addition, not competing with, but in addition, for men, for young men who don't know what they're doing. They're getting into this world and they don't know women yet. They don't understand them. They're barely, fully grown. And, you sympathize for some of them, like some of the more harmless and innocent and kind of naive ones, right? And you say, I want to set up a group for these young men to teach them about the pitfalls that some women, some abusive girls can do, how they can take advantage of you and this and that and everything else, right? Lead you on, everything, right? All sorts of everything from small things like that to maybe more serious things. I want to have a group that is all about workshops and all of that. You'd be hounded off campus. It would be MRA, incel, white supremacist. It would be called everything under the book, and it would be physically hounded. And all these campaigns, they shame. They would go to the president. They would ban it. Everything else. It would be seen. We come back again. It would be just called, that's fascism. We can't allow it. So again, that's why they ban the open debate policy, or the open discussion and inclusion of all political viewpoints policy, because to them, everything that isn't this puritanical belief system of intersectionality and whatever the hell it is, anyone that isn't that is the fascist. It's not like there's a small group of fascists out there. It's that everybody who isn't this is either latently or explicitly a fascist in some way, right? And then you end up with this insanity. Now I'm speculating there, but I think most people would agree. If you had the male version of this, it'd be gone. So next one is 72. Independent student unions. I that was one I just kind of noted. I don't think that's very interesting. 99. There's only a few more left, lads and ladies. The T Fund, according to Tenny, 78% of trans people in the UK and Ireland have thought about ending their lives, and 40% have attempted suicide. Now that's very sad. But again, some people, I'm not going to make these arguments. I don't think I'm allowed to, but some people out there say that maybe indicates that there's some kind of mental illness going on here to some extent, and maybe that's an issue. But again, if you were to make these arguments, I'm talking like Jordan Peterson level, right? Fascist, gone. So even if your argument actually could lend itself to less trans people committing suicide and thinking about ending their lives, potentially based on scientific evidence and sociological evidence and all of that, which exists, right? You're a fascist, you're gone. So again, it's no matter what, even if you actually could suggest how to reach out to people better and help them, gone. It's all about this ideology. So what do they want? They want the introduction of a T fund for social transition. So basically a fund for trans people. Now I can't use my own language here because my channel would be banned and stuff. So bear that in mind. But a T fund. So they want to fund transitions. Again, like the limited resources here, and college is meant to be a place where you just go to learn stuff, I thought. Aiding students financially. And again, there will be students, just like the girl who gets psychologically broken down after a year because she's been pumped and dumped 20 times and she has a nervous breakdown, shaves her head, gets the bull ring in her nose, gets depressed, is anxious, depressed, all this stuff, drug addict, whatever. Just like that just can destroy people, like I say, a murder machine. Well, what if you go into a college that's actively promoting this trans ideology as some kind of answer to your mental health issues? Maybe it's because you're trans, maybe it's whatever, and then they're just sliding money in your direction. You get your transition, we're saying it's a good thing, we're saying it's totally normal and that might be what you're feeling and blah blah blah, and then they're funding it as well. I mean, the idea that anybody would send their kids there, and that's kind of in a way my conclusion, but and I'll give it early, it's like, unless you're going to do STEM or a trade, do STEM or a trade. And if you're doing STEM, keep your head down, get it done and get the fuck out of there, right? That's all I would say. Because imagine throwing your child into this meat grinder. It's obscene, wasting 4 years of their lives. And I'm speaking about people who aren't doing STEM or medicine or something like that. People who are just doing it as this kind of strange, bizarre rite of passage. Stupid. When this is what the people who are in charge of it. The next one is number 100. It's not my hill to die, and I'm just going to jump right over that one, right? 105. what is this? Motion on free public transport for students. Now, this got me going because I was thinking, like, free public transport. Again, I've no inherent problem with that. You know what I mean? I don't want to be a Scrooge about it. I'm not the one at the purse strings or whatever. It's fine. But it seems like all the time it's like free transport, free this, free transition surgery, free everything. If you hand in your fees late or your assignment late, then you have to pay a fine or whatever, or you lose marks. We want to get rid of that because that's mean, and everything else is mean. And standards, drop standards, but at the same time, everybody should have access to college, which is free college and whatever. It should just be, let's just call it open borders for college. Everybody into college because it's a fundamental human right. It is essential for developing as a person or whatever it is, right? And I'm like, why? I'm not an elitist, and I'm inherently not an elitist, but I think college should be for people who are really talented, who really want it, and are really driven. And I would support scholarships being broadened, not broadened in their standards, like lowering standards, just broadened in the sense that anybody who's talented, passionate, and driven and really wants it for a reason and can demonstrate all of those things, no person who has all of those qualities should be denied access for lack of funding or the ability. Actually, they should be funded. I would be more for having way less people, but the people who do get funded, someone who's from a impoverished background who gets funded in, because not just because they're poor or whatever, because they're really talented and they're going, I really want this and it's for this reason and all of that, right? I'm not fucking around here. I believe that person should be put up in higher standards, even put them in, well, don't have them scraping by, give them proper funding at the but in order to do that, let's not have the other 2 million people who don't need to be there. And the other thing is that it's bad for them anyway, those people who don't need to be there. Like I say, it's 4 years of murder machine. You know, your daughter comes out with a bull ring, a shaved green head of hair, and like constantly talking about how depressed and anxious she is, right? And your son probably getting like a transition. And beyond all that, I'm kind of exaggerating there slightly, but you've wasted 4 years of lost income. You have become accustomed to a lazy, feckless lifestyle. A lot of people do. And I think a lot of people pick up a sense of alienation and kind of meaninglessness at an age where everybody is kind of reaching for something in that way and probably needs grounding in work and maybe in family and a normal life, or maybe their own self-education because we have internet. Again, for all these reasons, I think the university should be not some elite thing where only the rich get in, but just only the talented. I think it should be a strong meritocracy. Actually, Keith Woods has a video on this. It's called, and I command you, I beg you, don't wait till afterwards. I think it's, but he's got a, I can't find it. Anyway, if he's in the chat, he can link it and I'll find it afterwards. He's got a good video on this. And it's those kind of points. Look, it's like, that's the way it should be. And when I see a thing like free public transport, I'm like, I don't necessarily have a problem with public transport. I'm not like making a big campaign against that. It's a small thing, whatever. But it's just that direction. It's like, why have college like this? And I come back to the essential point, the murder machine. And my thumbnail, what did it have? A bunch of people taking off their caps, their graduation. And I said, what did I say? What did I say? Damn. Can anyone tell me what's in the thumbnail? I said, university, what did I say? Corporate rainbow. Oh no, I said, yeah, I think I said assimilated corporate rainbow citizen. It's very harmful for society when it's set up on this USI kind of basis with this cultish thing. It's 4 years of state, you know, kind of regime brainwashing. It is, because you either come out of there either believing all this stuff about trans and racism and blah, 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 blah. You either come out believing all that, or if you've kind of, you know, managed to not quite buy into it so much, you've learned that that's the thing you're meant to shut up about and definitely not mess with. Just keep your head down and depoliticize yourself, deculturalize yourself, because you either buy into it or you learn to keep your head low to the ground and just live your life away from all that and not believe in a better world, not have ideas about the world, about politics, about culture, about society, and all sorts of aspects of life. You just de-democratize and depoliticize yourself because you've learned that they are in charge. And that's the ruling ideology. And it feeds its way into the corporate workplace. The educated become the educators, so it self-perpetuates. The teachers in the schools, everyone. And that's the aim here, to my mind, is to put everyone through this kind of cultural experience and this indoctrination ceremony for 4 years, and they come out the other end then, and they're sufficiently brainwashed. The murder machine, it's a meat grinder. And again, insofar as someone is learning engineering to build buildings and be a doctor to save lives, no problem with that, right? It's all this, but that's only a small portion of it. It's everything else that comes along with it. Abolish it, have real skills, have real professions or whatever being taught, and make it a meritocracy. And maybe a certain aspect of it rich people pay for. I don't know, a certain amount of it is you earn money, a certain amount of it is a meritocracy. You know what I mean? Maybe a person from a impoverished background has access if they can prove their talent, their skill, their determination, and their direction, and then maybe get them to save a symbolic 2,000. It's like, go away for 1 year work, and if you can survive that year working to show you want it, then we'll give you 5 years. We'll put you up, everything. A system like that, true meritocracy, limited to people who just want it or properly want it for a reason. So what it's become now is a state brainwashing machine, and then also a business. And that's just toxic. So I'm so against that. So the next one is 108, and I think we're approaching the end. 108. No, that one I'm actually for. Oh, well, actually, the rent strikes thing, because I'm like, yeah, I think Gombean landlord, like, people are scum and all of that. I think that's inherently wrong. But they're like, the rent strikes, what's the bit I'm looking for here? Rent strikes involve withholding rent, typically from the college in college-owned student accommodation. And again, it's like, why does society en masse have a rent problem? It's like, yes, we have Gombean scum landlords, and I think they should be legally hung off the spire on O'Connell Street, right, for the most egregious offenders, right? That said, there's also reality to it. Aside from predatory capitalism and all of that, there's still strict real world limitations. There's only so much land. There's only so much building you can do at once. Everything else, right? There's only it's a finite thing, and it's like, these are the same people who want unlimited migration, unlimited college students, everybody being a transient, no such thing as a home and a family and intergenerationality, none of that. They're pretty much against all that. It's all migration, it's all college students, it's all renters and transients and nomads or whatever, right? They want all that, which all is probably collectively is the leading contributing factor, obviously, in terms of demand to any housing crisis. So they want it kind of both ways. And that's the only reason I point out that one. It's like, recognize that you are the problem. Or your industry is the problem. And where am I? That's 108. So 111, there's only a few more. Anti-war motion. I think I pointed that one out simply because I agree with that one, actually. So there's a few, a stopped clock is, right at least once or something. I don't even know that figure of speech properly enough to be using it. But anyway, I obviously wasn't listening in college, The next one is 138, and this is the second last one. No platform policy. So basically the absolute opposite to the free speech policy or the open political environment one that your man put up that got rejected. This one, I think, passed. I'm not sure, but it at least was put out there. This says it all. The decision to offer someone a platform to speak implicitly classifies their views as a legitimate position. No, it doesn't. I mean, if I debate a Scientologist on the volcanoes and the aliens, I think I'm doing the opposite. I think I have a good opportunity to delegitimize that opinion. So this is bullshit. They're just afraid, and they're completely insecure, and they know it. While at the same time kind of saying we're for free speech, but it must be responsible free speech and all of that. I'll just kind of skip to the end. Not to allow any individual who is known to hold racist or fascist views, defined by who, I don't know, not to permit them from entering USI premises. Now, I guarantee they would call me racist, fascist, Nazi incorrectly, right? Of course, I'm none of those things. I'm just a centrist moderate, but they would classify it. So what if it's like, if you're a normal person watching this, which most of you are, but like you're not political and maybe you're not so familiar with my views and my whatever, you've no idea how surreal it feels, because I put myself out there openly and stuff, right? You might not do the same naturally. A lot of people don't, but you've no idea how surreal it feels. I've been in some situations like this here and there, but I can just imagine this happening. If I went to USI premises and I went, "Hi, I'm so and so." If I emailed them and I said, "Hey, I want to come in and have a chat," and they went, "We've reviewed your work and we see that you have views that aren't compatible with ours. Therefore, we have a mandate that says you're not welcome on the premises," or something, and I showed up, I'm telling you, it's so weird. You know, I can envision it. You'll get 2 or 3 people come out and they go, "Could you please leave?" You know, this kind of stuff, right? And we've all seen it on YouTube, and we've seen these things happen. But when it's you yourself and you end up in situations like this, I've had a few like this happen to me. You've no idea how surreal it feels, because you're kind of inside in your own brain, inside in your own mind. And you know, you have family and friends and a life and all that yourself. You consider yourself a pretty normal, sane, moderate person, and yet they're looking at you like this. There's this big tension, and you're going, I mean, you know, yeah, it's so strange from your own point of view, because you're just standing there physically being like, "This is strange. This is a strangely tense environment. I don't know why. Like, I'm just me. Like, hello," and yet they're treating you as if you've just walked in with squelching kind of leather Nazi boots and you know, like gas canisters or something like that, right? It's like, what do I like? Your caricatured impression of whatever you think my views connote is so insane as to be only describable as a cult. But it's a well-funded, corporate-funded, state-funded, kind of state-backed cult, and that's where we're at. Is there any more? What one am I on now? 138. There's one more apparently, allegedly. So, sex workers. Yeah, so sex workers refers to escorting, lap dancing, stripping, pole dancing, pornography, webcamming, adult modeling, phone sex, and selling sex. Blah blah blah. I'm not going to get into it, but I think this one passed. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost fully certain that passed. And again, we come back to like, I think some people left, right, and in between, there are arguments in this kind of far right or dissident right or far left, all over the spectrum. I've seen them, arguments to say, from completely opposite people who will make the same argument in different ways, to say that prostitution is just inherently a human phenomenon. We might as well legalize and regulate it, right? I'm not making that argument. I'm making no argument. I'm just saying, my point is not to disagree with this fundamentally in and of itself. It's just to say that there are a lot of people who would say that's obscene. I don't agree with that at all. There's no way I'm going to legalize, you know, pornography or, you know, prostitution, street work, all that. You know, again, it's not even me saying it. I'm just saying there's lots of people, ordinary people all over the place, who would not only disagree with it, but be like, I can't believe I'm even being asked, right? There are just people who feel that way. And yet that passes uncontroversially, apparently, because if it passed, that suggests that it's uncontroversial. But yet this is controversial enough to not pass. Just saying that people of all political persuasions should be encouraged to take part in university life and USI life, right? That's not allowed. But this is apparently normal, uncontroversial, completely agreeable, a thing you just pass. So this is the kind of warped people we're dealing with and who run our university system. And like I say, I admire people like the Birkin and all that for getting into the war on campus. It's essential to do, but personally as well as that, you can fight many battles at once. As well as that, I think it's important to just not go. If you want to be an engineer, a doctor, whatever, go study your stuff, keep to yourself, basically, make a few good friends, whatever, but don't get into this. Like, I'm in college now lifestyle, stay away from it. Trade or STEM, with a view to something in particular, and if not, don't do it. If you're not sure what to do, I don't know, travel, learn a skill, learn to play the flute for a year, work in a cafe, do anything. Just like, don't needlessly go to this place, because you know what, if you want to needlessly go, basically think twice. You know, you can always do it next year or whatever. Don't just go because it's like, I'm 18 now, school is over, now it's time to enter the next stage of the murder machine. Don't do it on that basis. That's all I'm saying. So that's them. I don't know, there were some quick Twitter reactions from the Twitter sphere. This is like back in the day in like 2005, when talk shows first discovered Twitter, like, and TV like shows, they'd be like, and now we have there'd be like 3 guys on a computer and they're like, we're getting from Twitter. Do you remember those days? So that's what I'm doing now. Irish Students Against Globalism, which I think is Burkean, made a few good points. The USI is the incubator for the future Irish elite, destined to staff the Oireachtas committees, corporate boards, and NGOs to drive this country further down the skids with leftist policies. They exist off guaranteed slush funds and through the indifference of students. I'm just going to go to all of the Burkean kind of ones here. The people gathered at USI 20 in no way represent the 350,000 students in Ireland. They were a clique of Trotskyists and careerists living off student slush funds. Similar point. Did the USI actually just set up a fund to facilitate sex changes for students, or did my reactionary brain just fabricate it? This organization is just an extension of people before profit, but with bigger budgets. I need to have a drink there, but USI proposing to support the use of the anti-racist snitch line I report, basically to make up numbers about racism. That doesn't really happen, to inform on students. Oh yeah, so I just wanted to close with one point. If you can just take all those little rambles I did throughout the stream on university and the fundamentals of it, you know, take those as writ. That's my kind of conclusion on university and USI and all of that. But there's just one thing, and it's adjacent to this. I was going to do this a different night, but I decided that actually it's a separate story, but it kind of ties in and it's quick, so I'll do it anyway. So this will only take a sec. I just learned about this today. It's people saying you'll think it's unrelated, but it's kind of not. YouTube has deleted every comment I ever made about the Wumao, something to do with China, the CCP in China. You hear these stories. They're banning this. They're influencing TikTok. They have say over Google and YouTube and all of that. They're deleting every comment I made about Wumao, whatever that is, something, an internet propaganda division of the Chinese Communist Party, who at Google decided to censor American comments on American videos hosted in America by an American platform that is already banned in China. This appears to be a new global policy on YouTube, not directed at me specifically. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. Someone else says similar. It's kind of funny that China sent so many Wumao to jump the firewall to argue with foreigners. They have been taught to trust the narrative, but when confronted with different ideas, they have no idea how to counter-argue. They're completely lost. And someone else says, YouTube has admitted to deleting comments from its comment section some critical phrases of the Chinese Communist Party, Chinese Communist ideology, whatever it is, right? And you see a lot of these kind of almost neo-conny liberal type people making this point, and it's completely legitimate. I get it. It's true. Hard to argue with. You know, I'm not making an alternative. I'm not saying they shouldn't say it, but it reminds me of this USI stuff. And the USI insanity is replicated. You see the same stuff in the Department of Justice and Equality. You see the same stuff in any normal corporate kind of workplace. It's not limited to the USI. It's across Western society, right? And not just Ireland, but we're basically just doing the same thing as England and America. It's the West. And it's in every institution, and it is what it is, right? It's not popularly supported. It hasn't got a mandate. This mass replacement migration has zero mandate. Anytime a vote is suggested, whether it's Brexit, the citizenship referendum in Ireland, anything that hints as being adjacent to it will win against this mass migration thing and all this diversity stuff and whatever, blah, blah, blah. A lot of these things anyway, specifically the migration thing, to me, I'm not even talking about some of the other social issues, migration, racism, blah, 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 diversity, all of that whole sphere, which is being heavily forced on Western societies. Not only the phenomenon itself, but the actual belief system that you must have to go along with it, i.e. if you're racist, you're evil and blah, blah. And it's so heavy, it's so hardcore. It's not just like a little thing. It's like wound into our lives everywhere. We've just gone through the USI, right? Which is the Union of Students in Ireland. It's not an irrelevant thing for colleges. So don't accuse me of talking about things that aren't relevant or at the center of things. It's central in the West, and it's dogmatic, it's cult-like, it's in your face, and it doesn't leave you alone. And when I see people kind of complain about China forcing YouTube to censor stuff and all that, basically the Chinese, which is a civilization of itself, having this censorious influence on YouTube, I kind of go, yeah, okay, but like, what about the West? Like, what about the West and where we're at? Like, it's a bit rich in a way to always point the finger. The same people who would be very like, I'm a freedom fighter, I'm a liberal, classical liberal freedom of speech person or whatever, against tyrannical regimes, censorious regimes, I'm against all that, and I'll talk about it with China, but it's like, can we talk about the one in the West as well? Because YouTube do the very same in the West. Anybody who says anything about mass migration, diversity, open borders, all of this kind of stuff, maybe a bit about Islam or Judaism or this or that, religious conversation, whatever, right? It gets horsed out of it, right? And again, the contradictions, anybody can say what they want about white people or Christians, that's fine. So none of it makes sense. It's all insane, whatever. It's this insane ideology. And yet it's forced down our throats. You have to have it. You'll be shadow banned, you'll be banned, you'll be fired from your job, you will be hate speech, arrested. Alison Chablot, look her up. She's been in jail for writing songs. All of this kind of stuff, right? Completely on par with a lot of Chinese stuff. And yet we do this thing, and it always bugs me. And I know China are bad in their way, the CCP, but there's something about the Western ability to like point over at someone else and be like, look at this tin pot regime, and not see the regime they're inside in themselves. And the reason I make this point is just to tie it back to all of this USI. How can you not compare this USI stuff, which, like I say, is broad-based within society at large? It's just merely reflective of the rest of society. How can you look at all of that and then point to a place like China and be like, look at them, they're in a censorious cult-esque regime that they're afraid to question, and they're brainwashed into not even knowing how to question. Oh, look how crazy that is. And I go, just come on. Can we look at this? Can we look at this and see how this was rejected? And funding transgender surgeries for like students who are like 19 who don't know what's going on yet, really. And funding for like Georgian men to be students, what else was there? There was a load of insane stuff here, wasn't there? State college for everybody. That sounds like state college for, even if you're there for no reason, you have no actual purpose to be there, you must go through it. It is an essential that a citizen is not free unless they all go to university for 4 years, even if it's just to drink and be brainwashed and have nervous breakdowns. But you're not a citizen until you do that. You're not free until you do that, citizen. You must. How is this not CCP? How is this not? And it's just that phenomenon of people looking at the regime next door instead of doing what makes the most sense, really. I mean, even if you think you're fully free in your own society, before you point the finger elsewhere, you probably should go, okay, let's just do a critical analysis. Even if I'm not in a regime, let's do a critical analysis as a thought experiment. If I were to be in a regime and to view it in such a way, what does that regime look like? Which things am I not allowed to say? Let's just run down the characteristics of a regime and then apply that as just a fun exercise to the society I live in. So even if there are issues I agree with or whatever, let's just look at draw up and someone should do this, maybe I'll do it, draw up a kind of a template for what constitutes a tyrannical, a kind of a oppressive, censorious, brainwashing regime. What constitutes that? And make up 5 points. Here are the 5 or 10 points that constitute it, and then apply it to your own society and do a good think about that first and figure it out before pointing at someone else, completely oblivious, and people will laugh at these Chinese people who think, Chinese people go, I do have freedom of speech. I'm allowed to say what I want. And we have a great life, and our government is fair and good and just, and our society operates well and all this. And you go, oh, well, they don't know. They're oppressed in a certain bubble. It's like you must do it to yourself first. It only makes sense. And you can start with the USI. The USI 2020 Congress. That's an excellent place to start. So anyway, I will leave it there, and we will be back tomorrow night. Thanks everybody for joining me, and thanks for sticking with me quite late as well. I appreciate that. I enjoyed just chatting away about that, and I hope you kind of liked it or found it worth joining me on. I'll be back tomorrow. I don't quite know what with, but we'll figure it out. Ihawa, and thank you for watching. See you.